Okay, so we're going to assemble our two-layer robotic car chassis for ECE 361. So you're going to need the bag of parts and then some additional things. There's the screwdriver that you've got in your kit for assembling. We're going to attach a breadboard to it once it's assembled, and we're going to use one of the four AA 6-volt battery packs and some of the four AA batteries from the kit. Now you'll notice that inside the bag, there's actually a battery holder for two AA batteries. We won't be using that because the circuits that we're going to be using to control the car are going to require that we work with 6 volts rather than 3 volts. So we're going to just put that one aside. Okay. The only other thing that I have in here that you don't have in your kit is some tie wraps. And those are just going to be there as a strain relief on the wires that are attached to the motors. So you don't have those in your kit, but soon I'll be putting a whole bunch of those on the red cart outside of my office, and you can go and grab a set of those. That's just there as a strain relief for the motor's wires. So I'm going to pull those aside. I'm going to pull the battery pack and the breadboard aside, and we'll start to unpack. So we've got our hardware, our passive caster wheels, and we've got the drive wheels, the motors, and then the 3 layers. So first of all, the kit actually has 3 layers. We're only going to be using 2 of them. And the reason why we're going to use 2 is that we're going to have car demo 1 and then car demo 2 in the course. And there'll be 2 different circuits. So let's put aside one of these plates and we'll reserve that for car demo 2. And so for now, we're just going to build a 2-layer chassis. And this will be the plate with the notches here. That's where the drive motors are going to go. And then this one here we'll use up on top, and we'll build it to support what we're going to do in car demo 1. And then later on, you can potentially reuse this one, or you may want to use the other plate that we have set aside when we get into car demo 2. Okay, so let's see. First things first. Be very careful with these wires that are soldered on. They can easily break off, and we don't want that to happen. So just at this point, just be very careful that you don't break off that wire. And then later on, we'll get some strain relief to put on them. Okay. So now the question is, how do we assemble those onto this chassis? Well, let's open up this bag. Being careful not to lose these parts. And it's these plastic pieces here that will serve as the brackets for holding the motors on to the plate. So we'll use, let's see, this one here, this plate, and those brackets are going to go into these slots here, there, and there. And then that's going to hold a motor in place. And the motors are going to be on the underside. Let's see, the motors and the wheels are going to be on the underside of the chassis. So when they're assembled, the motors will be underneath. But we'll start off by kind of assembling them up top. And let's see, I'm looking to see if if these wires should be on the inside or the outside. Let's see, at this point, I'm going to keep the wires on the inside. It's not obvious which way to orient the motor. It's possible I'll make a mistake, but I'm going to do it like this. So there are holes in the bracket, holes in the motor, and I'm going to put it on like that. Get a bracket there. And then try to sandwich all this together. Let's see, they've got some through holes there. Feels like I don't have enough hands for this, but that's all right. We'll make it work. Whoa. Okay, so I'm going to put one of these long screws through this whole assembly like that. Grab one of the nuts. Okay, I think that's all right. And then I'll get another one of these long screws. And there's not a lot of space there to hold that. And it keeps sliding out of my fingers. The motor has a magnet on it, and it's sort of attracting these little nuts, so that's annoying. Boy, I'm just gonna try to hold that with my finger. As you can see, I'm having a difficult time with this assembly, but I'm gonna try to hold it like that, and then use the screwdriver to turn it in, and hopefully it'll catch. Now you may come up with an easier way to do this than I am, but you can see I'm having a little dexterity issue here. But I think I've got it. Okay, I think I'm now screwing that in. Okay, that's in, and that's in. Okay, so I have one of the motors on. So where are we going with this? It's going to be, the motors are going to be down below, and I'm going to put one of these wheels on. And maybe I'll go ahead and put that wheel on right now. You'll see that this is sort of cut. That wheel is cut to fit on one of these drive shafts. So we just have to push that on like that. Okay. So now we have one of those on there. Good. And now we're going to repeat on the other side. The first one's harder because, we're trying to figure out how to actually hold it on. So the second one should be a little easier. Okay, get that other screw. I'm gonna, there we go. Okay, this is the easy one because there's kind of plenty of room for it. Okay, now I'm going to get the bottom one on. That's the one we have to kind of fight with to hold that nut in place. Once again, it's falling in and getting attracted to the magnet in the motor. Okay, so I'm kind of using my thumb to hold it in place. Just doesn't feel like it's going to fit, but I know it does. Okay, once it catches, then there we go. Okay, that one. And then this one. Okay. And we'll put that wheel on. You want to get that wheel aligned the right way on the drive shaft. You do need some pressure to push it on there. There we go. Okay. Phew. So now we have the bottom assembled with our motors and our wheels. And again, just be very careful with those wires. You don't, if they come off, then it's going to require that you take the whole thing apart and then we go and find a fine point soldering iron and then resolder those back on. And that's really not something you want to have to do. Okay. So we also have these passive caster wheels, and you'll notice that there's a cutout. Looks like we'll fit one of them there, and then we'll also fit one of them here. And then because of the height of those wheels, we're going to have to use some little extensions to connect these. And so that's going to be some of these, I believe. So what we're going to do is use one of these short extensions. And those short extensions have, they're threaded on both ends so that the screws will just go right in. And at this point, rather than assemble all four rather than screw this caster wheel on with all four holes, I'm just going to use two. And I'll see if that works out for us. And if we need to add two, then I'll add the other two, then I'll go ahead and add them on. But I kind of feel like it's going to be okay with just two of those casters. So let's see, I'll flip that upside down. All right, there's one of them. I'll get the other one. Yeah. Okay, so there's one of those caster wheels, and it seems like it's on pretty well. It like I said, you could put all four of those standoffs on there, but it feels to me like it's on pretty well with just two. And now I'm going to go put the other one on. And maybe I'll do this one this way. I'll put a screw on there, and then I'll thread the standoff onto the screw. And likewise for the diagonal opposite end. All right, and now we'll attach that. I've never really felt that I'm particularly mechanically inclined. You know, getting my fingers to do this stuff with these screws, I can get it to work, but it just never felt like I had like a natural mechanical aptitude. I'm much better with circuits. I can put circuits together, but when it comes to all these little mechanical parts, it takes a little work for my fingers to actually do their thing. Okay, so now we have our chassis. assembled. It's pretty stable. Let's see if I can get this to focus better. Come on and focus. I think what's happening is it's not really focusing on the glass. It's focusing on the table rather than the chassis. Okay. Well, anyway, we at this point we have our one layer. This is sort of our drive layer, and we're going to put the batteries and the electronics up on the top layer. So we're going to put that on, and the way that's going to go on is with these standoffs, and there are holes 1, 2, looks like 3 and 4. So what I'll do is I'll put 4 standoffs in there, and let's see, how do I want to do that? Yes. I think I'll start over on this side. Again, being very careful with those wires from the motors. You just don't want to break those wires off. All right, there's one standoff there. I'll get another one over on this side here. I'm putting the screw in first. And there it is again. It's been drawn to the magnet on the motor. Okay. Come on now. Maybe I'll come back to that one. Actually, let's just make sure we're putting these in the right place. Okay, that one is going to line up with that one. I need one here, and then I'm going to need one, it looks like right here. So I'll put that one on. And then another one here. Okay, and then we have this one that we're trying to put in here, but the motor keeps grabbing it. There, I've got it in there. And I'll thread that one on. Okay, so now this top plate is just going to sit right on. Let's see, these two are closer together, and these two are farther apart. So it's going to go in like that. Okay, now, come on now. Okay, now before we really attach that, I want to attach a battery pack. So now what's going to happen is this little car is going to go fast. It's going to spin around. It's going to start and stop. And so you're going to need to take your battery pack and screw it in. Otherwise, it'll sort of zing out on us. And so now let's sort of talk about the placement of things. We're going to put a circuit board here, and the circuit board has an adhesive backing. So you can pull that off, and we're going to just put that right on there so that it'll stay on. And then the battery pack, what I'm going to recommend is you put it on the underside. So it has a hole in it, right? Looks like 1, 2 holes. Let's see if we can, how well we can screw this down here. Okay, this battery pack is slightly different from the ones I've used in previous years in that it has a little hole here and a little hole on this side. So I think I'm just going to see if I can enlarge that hole a little bit to fit a screw in. And there we go. I've enlarged it with the point of the screwdriver. And I'm probably not going to use both holes. I'm just going to use one. And the purpose is just to hold it so that it doesn't go flying off. And so it's wherever I can find a hole in there for it. Again, being mindful that we have to put the circuit board on here. So what I'm doing is I'm just looking for a place underneath where I have one of those holes that I can grab into one of the holes on the battery pack. Okay. I see a hole right here, and I'm going to see if I can screw it in like this. So then we're going to have the batteries on one side, the circuit board on the other. I'm keeping these battery wires sort of on the inside, and I'm going to feed those up through one of these slots. So I'm going to use that hole there. So I need to push. Let's see, these screws are all the same size, and I just hope that the screw is long enough to fit. See, what we're doing here, what makes this step a little difficult, if I bring back, this is the 3-volt 2 AA cell battery pack that came with the motor kit. And you can see it has a nice set of holes, which is probably well matched to the holes on these plastic plates. But we're not going to use that because we need 6 volts rather than 3. So we're sort of doing some modification to the kit design here. But I'm going to take this screw, and by hook or by crook, I'm going to try to force it into this hole. Okay, that's in there. All right, this is just to keep it from kind of flying out on us. Okay, back to the plate. And let's see, I'm going to remind myself where this goes, where's the front and where's the back. Okay, and it was this hole here I'm going to try to use, like this. And darn it, it's not long enough. Not long enough to grab. That's a bit of a dilemma. That's a bit of a dilemma. Okay, so since that doesn't work, all right, this isn't going to be very pretty, but I'm going to use an extender here. You know, I'm kind of now making this up as we go along, but I'm screwing one of these little extenders in here. The problem is that the screw isn't long enough to get through the plastic of the battery holder and also the plastic on here. So I've decided to use one of these little extenders that we have, and that way I can attach the battery pack via that extender. It's not elegant and it's not particularly strong, but I think it's going to be okay. Okay, so at least we do have the battery pack kind of attached onto the chassis, and we're going to make sure it does not interfere with the motors. It looks like it does interfere, so I'm going to move it. Okay, I think that's going to work. All right, so we have the battery pack down there. It's screwed on. I'm going to put my batteries in. Get my 4 AA batteries. And holding it by the battery pack, there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, at this point, since we've got this loaded up, then of course you want to make sure that you do not let those 2 wires touch each other, because that would create a short circuit. All right, this isn't on there great, but it's at least it's on. And for now, that's going to be okay for what we want to do for the initial tests. So I've got to figure out how to get this back on here. Okay, that looks good. And so I have the top plate that's sitting on these 4 different extenders, and I'm just going to screw it down with 2. I can use all four, but I don't think I need to. I'm just going to use 1 and 2 for now. Maybe I'll want to go back and use all four to lock it down, but for now, 2 seems like it should be all right. Okay, so there's my car. I've got my motors, what I'm being careful with those wires. I've got the battery pack, and we're going to put a circuit board on here. And so I'm just going to, let's see, I'm just going to peel off the back of this and then stick it right on there. Okay, so there's my circuit board. Okay, now I'm going to run the batteries up through one of these slots, these battery wires. Okay, and the red one is going to go into that red rail, the black one into that rail. Okay, now the motors. And I've said it many times, just be careful, be careful. You don't have a strain relief on those motors, so those motor leads. So it's very easy for them to come out, be pulled out from where they attach to the motors, and we don't want that to happen. So just gently feed them up through one of these slots. Okay. Okay, now a couple things about the leads. So the battery pack has these nice pins on them, so they can fit into the breadboard and you won't have any difficulty. The motors don't have that. They have these leads, they're actually tinned, but they're short little leads that are tinned, and they may or may not go into the holes, and eventually they'll start to fray, and you'll have to use some of your jumper wires to connect them. But for right now, all I want to do is just see if I can, I can't even, it won't even go in there. It won't even go in, it looks like. Let me see if I can move this one down here. Yeah, it doesn't even make a contact, it looks like. So that means I have to strip off some of this, and I'm just going to use my, well, trying to use my fingernail to do it. That may or may not work. Okay. So I think I'm going to have to find something to strip some of those wires. Let's just try it this way. I'm going to take the one that I still have a little bit of bare wire. I'm just going to connect that one and that one, and it should be one. All right, you can see it's wanting to spin around. All right, there's one of my motors spinning around. And if I were to put it on the ground, if I had these wires connected, it would just spin around in circles because I only have one of the wires going. And so I obviously have a little bit of a problem here with the little length of these wires. So I'm going to have to strip some of that, and so that I can connect those wires into the breadboard. So I'm going to pause for a minute and see if I can find a tool to strip them. Okay, so we have to strip off some of the insulation on here. And so if you're fortunate enough to have a wire stripper, then of course that's easy, but I wouldn't expect you to necessarily have one. I've got a pocket knife that I can use, or I'm going to just try using a nail clipper just to kind of go around, pinch the wire, turn it around, and see if I can just pull that insulation back. The key is to pinch it just enough to cut the insulation, but not so much that you cut the wire. And keep turning. Oh, I've cut the whole wire. I'll try it again. Turn, turn. Okay. There, I've been able to strip enough of the wire, and you'll see that it's stranded. This is not a solid piece of wire. it's stranded, so it's not going to fit into the breadboard. So we're going to have to get some of our jumper wires, and I'll also do the same thing to this one, just enough to try to bite on the insulation, turn it around. Okay, so I've done that by hook or by crook. So this is just one of the wires at this point. And so what I'm going to do now is get some of the jumper wires from the kit, and I'm going to wrap the pins around these because these little things aren't going to go into the breadboard. So let me pause for a minute. Okay, so I've got a couple of wires from the kit. I chose green ones. I would suggest you take anything other than red and black because we want to reserve red and black for power supply wires. Okay, so I'm just going to twist that exposed end around, and I'll plug that into one of my power rails, and then the other motor lead, twist, and into the other power rail. And now when I connect the battery, what we're going to expect is this little car to be spinning around. And let's see if we can see that. All right, so you see it's going around counterclockwise. If I just reverse the polarity, I'll reverse the polarity by taking this one out and putting them in the other one in. And what you'll see is it's wreaking havoc, but it's going around clockwise. That's because we have permanent magnet DC motors in there. And when you polarize them one way, the shaft will spin in one direction, and the other direction, it'll go in reverse. Okay, so there's our two-layer chassis. The things to be careful again are that you don't let these wires come out, and you could put some tie wraps on there to create a strain relief. And maybe I'll go ahead and put a couple of those on there just to show you how I want to do it. I'm going to use this hole here and see if I can put a tie wrap on here that hopefully will serve as some degree of strain relief so that we're not pulling on those wires. I think that'll work well. And then I'm going to use my nail clipper to trim that. And then I'll put another one on this side here, grabbing those wires. Yeah, so that should be okay. That way whatever we do up top, we're not going to be putting a strain on the wires. Trim that one. Okay. So there's our car chassis, and we have our surface for doing some things with electronics. Things to be careful of right now, we just have these motor wires that are just wrapped around here. We just don't want them to touch each other and short. It's not going to, it won't cause damage, but what it'll do is it will drain your batteries quickly if they short. You could, if you have access to a soldering iron, you could solder those. You could also put some electrical tape or really any kind of tape that you have on there. Okay, but that's our car chassis.